Good evening. Welcome back once again to the Imaginary Gallery. It is TJ, your host. Tonight is a Narcissus Bag of Tricks video, but it's going to trail onto the end of the last one, which was not a part of any particular series. It was my response to a viewer question, which came from C. Fern. And I'll read the question again because I think I left out a little on the last. Then after this, I'll go through a list of some of the common games that these creatures play. To the original question, I've been watching and reading everything on psychopaths et al. for 4 months. Since I pinpointed what was wrong with my ex-boyfriend, I'm now at the stage of trying to understand how and why they all use the same techniques, and this happens worldwide. There are jokes that they all go to Narcs school, but seriously, what is the psychology behind it? Do they learn, or does it come naturally, and why? Nothing veers from the script. It's not like they include malicious baking or tennis in the mix. So weird. Which I covered some of on the last video, but there's some other parts I realized I didn't even touch on. So let's break it down piece by piece. How and why they all use the same techniques, and then about jokes about the school. I must admit, which I can't believe I didn't even bring up in the last video, but I've actually said something like that before, long before the YouTube stuff even existed. I would just be like, do these people all go to the same school? Because it's like they do the same techniques. Sometimes, as I said before, they use the same exact phrasing for specific sentences, which is weird. But as far as why they use the techniques, I touched on that in the last one. To recap, they're limited. They're like kids that never grew up. They have basic needs. You'll never see the real person that has these basic needs. No, you'll just see the character they've portrayed for you. The psychology behind it, and do they learn or does it come naturally, and why? Well, again, this ties back to if you picture what they are, which is that creature who could never come to a person and say,
"Hi, I'm a creature. I'm empty inside, and I've got to find supply. I've got to find someone I can do this to and do that to. I'm going to pretend to be like them."
Nobody like that would ever be successful if they were to say stuff like that. But that's the kind of creature underneath the fake facade of the, hi, I'm the nicest person you've ever met. As far as do they learn, or does it come naturally? I think they learn as we all as children do. When we're children, we experiment. We learn to manipulate sometimes, or we try to manipulate and we're punished and then don't do it. When we're that young, we're just starting out. So we're likely to start out with trying things this way, and oh, it doesn't work out, so then we try things that way. Well, these creatures are in a perpetual status of childhood, and they still have those same basic mechanisms that we probably all use somewhat, kind of like trial and error, and that's how it feels a lot of times with these creatures, where you're just observing them over time and you notice what appears to be, oh, it's trying this technique today, oh, and then later it's, oh, it's trying that, and it just brings your brain back to childhood. And what's strange about it is you've been there before, it's familiar to you, so that may cause you to ignore a red flag to think, hey, I shouldn't be being back to childhood. There's something wrong here. You won't think any of that, unfortunately. So chances are you'll be pulled in further. It's natural for them to seek out a way to get the things they want. Plus, you add on that they don't have guilt, shame, or remorse, or empathy, or any of that. They just are here like an alien predator who needs things out of different people. The way it comes across, unfortunately, looks the same across the board, with each abuse on the targets are tailor-designed to fit that particular target, which means if two ex-targets got together and compared notes, chances are they wouldn't all be the same, because each person's story would be directly tied to whatever story the target gave to the creature. Because remember, they're mirroring. So if one of them was a churchgoer who insisted on going to church every Sunday and showing her allegiance to the Lord. And then there was another one who was a total atheist who slept in every Sunday. Well, if the two of them got together and happened to know, oh, you know that creature too? One would be like,
Oh, yes, he was always there on time for church every Sunday. He's so religious.
and then the other one, the atheist, would be like,
What? We slept in every Sunday. We don't go to church.
that's how it works with these creatures. And yes, I'm aware that the last video was kind of short, and I realized I left a few things out from the viewer question. I'd mentioned a scenario of an orange bird and how you'd notice its characteristics and others would. That was tying into targets of the narcissistic abusers who may, let's say, have one after another, and they're going to pick up on certain characteristics. The pink bird analogy was designed to say that you're in the jungle, you're noticing that the orange bird does this and does that, and then somebody else also watches it and sees it at maybe a different time of the day than you do, and they notice whatever, and then you compile it. Kind of like with these YouTube videos where you're in real life experiencing something horrible, thinking it's like a unique situation, but then you turn on a YouTube channel and you hear the exact story being told that you're experiencing and think, wait a second, this isn't a one-time thing, and then you realize that you're being targeted for something. So that's what that was regarding, was how we slowly learn things and then compare notes, learn more as we go. So hopefully that clears that part up. Then the next part here comes from an article I found, which I find it very useful when you find articles or chapters in books or websites or any source of media where you can read a list of specific games these creatures play. I've given plenty of personal experiences of these games that are being played, but I also find it very worthwhile to find another person's work. Like I've done Thomas Sheridan's book or somebody else's book, but in this case it's a random article I came across on the web. I find these things are useful in recognizing that you're actually being played, to recognize that a game is going on and you are the target. What typically happens in these situations, you may be dating the man or woman of your dreams. Then after a while of too good to be true, all of a sudden reality sets in. By this point, many times you're so far into the situation, you never expected that the person that was so great was going to snap and then all of a sudden turn into someone else. You just didn't predict that. Even if you suspected it and said, you're not going to change on me, are you? You're not going to become mean, are you? And they'll be like,
No way.
even if that's what they're planning to do. And that's one of the important parts of this. When you're listening to information about the specific games they play, don't make the mistake I've made on a few occasions, where you have your set of values and morality and logic. You find a chapter in a book or an article that directly relates to or describes some crazy-making situation you went through with a narcissistic monster, and you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that your viewpoint was accurate. However, you tried to share that viewpoint with the creature only to be shot down, only to be told, oh, that's not the way things are, or regardless, it's just foreign to us usually because the target is used to being love-bombed and spoiled for things you didn't even ask for, and they were just given to you. Well, now here you are actually upset and actually asking to say, hey, wait a second. Then you'll get the foolish,
Oh, I just did that because of whatever. I normally don't.
which is not a good answer. Or it would be,
Why do you have to criticize things I do? What about when you do that?
so they don't discuss it, and you start to feel your false sense of security that you don't know is false starts to erode because you think that you're mixed up with the person who's there for you, who's on your side, who will do anything and everything you want, yet the first time you actually want something, you're told, oh, you're just too sensitive, oh, you're listening to people who lie, blah, blah, blah. So the point here is, when you hear about these games and techniques, the key is do not take this information and then run to your creature and say, I told you what you were doing is wrong. Look, I found proof, and play the video or show them the chapter. That is not advisable. it doesn't matter if you have 1,000% proof to back up your claim. These creatures who alter reality and live in their own fantasy world will discredit whatever it is you say. Even if you met with Jesus Christ and he told you that what was going on was wrong, doesn't matter. It will be discredited, no matter what the source. Another problem to keep in mind here involves isolation. If you are dating one of these creatures and they've done all their homework and covered all their bases, chances are they've already infiltrated your primary social group. They've already shown how wonderful they are and how much they care about you. So when you, who's isolated in private with this creature, start to notice certain things that just don't work, and then if you all of a sudden step forward and say, I think there's something wrong, problem is, the creature's already influenced your friends and turned them into flying monkeys, has made deliberate displays of affection for you in front of them, done wonderful things with you or for you that you may have even said to your friends, oh, he or she was so great, you know what it did? It did this for me. That's all in your history, which you have to keep in mind. And they've got the situation set up, which is all on purpose, which, of course, most of us would never think to do something like this. Listen to these examples. See if you can tell this is what's happening. Take note. And if you see it again and again, it's time you have a little conversation with yourself. Tell yourself that you're dealing with a toxic monster. How are you going to get out of it? Because too often, like some of us will, like I would be, you will be acting, thinking that, stupidly, that would make it, oh, I can recognize that tactic. Oh, if I just say, hey, I recognize that tactic, I can see what you're doing, that's wrong, I would think disappear. And the person would be like,
Oh, it's on to me? Oh, okay, I won't do it.
That does not work that way. That's a fantasy. But many times we want to believe that if we just address it, it'll go away. But if these creatures, you are goyim, you're sheep. These people are the rulers. You're not going to know what they're up to. Remember, this creature is perfect for everyone and was perfect for you once. But when you spend more and more time periods with it, you start to see through the fakery. Well, the other people don't. The other people still see that perfect partner for you, and oh, you're going to complain after all it did for you? Oh, you're ungrateful. That's all been set up in advance. So you are kind of isolated because you cannot usually go to one of your peers and say, here's what I think is happening, because even if you can, but the chances are they've already been poisoned. So they'll just think, it's true, you are losing it. When your creature told me that you were losing it and being paranoid, I couldn't see it. Well, now I do. That's disgusting. And once you uncover the particular game being played, our tendency is to want to take the person and shake them and say, I can't believe it. Especially if it's some topic you've discussed before, such as two of you are dating and the creature has said, oh, when I date someone, I don't pay attention to anybody else ever, and you shouldn't either. And let's say that it does, and you find out about it and all that. Chances are you've had the discussion, and it was probably directed towards you, such as the creature's telling you, if I'm dating you, I expect you to be looking for me and me only or something. That's normally where you get their fake sense of values. But when then you find out that it's making lust to its secretary every other weekend when you have to go out of town, well, that's a big deal. And chances are you've had discussions about such things, again relating to you. The creature would be like,
If I found out you ran off with someone and did what, it would be horrible.
Well, in this case, because they're entitled, they're doing it. Well, you would think that there'd be a hearty conversation. When you say, hey, wait a second, you feel so strongly about this, well, what about that? You will not get anywhere with these creatures, and our tendency is to try to shame them, or to at least get them to crumble down just a little to say, oh my goodness, I did make such a big deal about that. And when we're in it, where your primary group of friends thinks the world of this person, let's say you try to reiterate one of the games that you think is being played. Well, chances are the creature's already gone to that person and told them that you are starting to feel paranoid. Depart. Here I am breaking that same rule. Oh, I've got a problem. Oh, I've got a fit. You won't hear anything like that. You'll hear the usual, oh, who cares if I did that? I only did it because of whatever. And you think, wrong. Moving along. to the list. The article I found online was written by Alexander Burgemeester. I will include a link down below, but the article itself is entitled Games Narcissists Play, which I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just figured I'd cover a few parts. This author tells us that these types of creatures are masters at playing mind games. They play to win, and they also take no prisoners. They're very poor losers, so if they don't win, many times they will react in a fit of rage, and they'll stomp away like a little child. The only way for the other person, which is you, to win is to not play. This author is going to give you some of the more common games these creatures love to play. Number one, ping pong. No relation to Comet or Pizza Pedogate. The author tells us when a person begins to understand how these creatures actually work, we begin to realize that it's kind of like playing a game of ping pong. Anytime they have to self-reflect about anything, they will immediately throw the ball back to the other person that they consider to be their opponent. These creatures will always throw the ball back to the other person. They do this in the expectation that they won't have to take any kind of responsibility or accountability for their horrifying behavior. These creatures hope that by not ever taking responsibility for their own actions, they do by blaming you for something you did, shaming you for something you did, projecting onto you something that they did, denying something that they did, etc. The partner will do what they've always done, which is to forgive the creature, make excuses for its behavior, claim that it couldn't help itself because it was having a bad day, and wrong. Not advisable. Now, this creature is a moving target, and you are always on the firing line. To get away from these creatures or expose these creatures, you always have to keep an eye on the ball, their actions, and their motives for playing their retarded games with you. You have to stop wanting to play. You can stop catching the ball and put it back in the creature's court by setting boundaries and making it aware of its actions. The creature then realizes it has no one to play with anymore, which means, if you're lucky, it'll drop you like a hot potato, or it will try to punish you in some way, or it will run away. Second game they love to play is called gotcha. The creature can be a master of fake empathy. It appears to take you in and to understand every little thing you're experiencing and to be genuinely able to put itself into your shoes. These types of behaviors early on are what cause you to severely let your guard down. Just when you think there's a genuine give and take in this relationship, though, these creatures pull a fast one on you, which is a gotcha. Most often when you're at your lowest point, it will suddenly tell you about its extraordinary new career move, some luxurious trip it's going to be taking, a gigantic shift in financial status that'll make you feel even less significant. These monsters perfectly execute an unexpected psychological pounce. Purpose is to grind you down, humiliate you, and make you feel as small and inferior as possible. Number 3 on this list would be called Crazy Eights, which I have covered on many occasions, but it's once again nice to see another person's viewpoint on the same types of subjects. The Crazy Eights is a favorite game of these creatures, where you are called crazy anytime you attempt to confront the creature, bring up past issues or behaviors, or expose them when they're doing something horrifying or appalling. The game goes like this. You are told that you have an overactive imagination. You don't know what you're talking about. This person doesn't have any idea what you're talking about. Or you're simply making things up just for the purpose of causing problems. These creatures will tell you that it's obvious that you're the one who's crazy, and, of course, tell you that everybody around you agrees you are crazy. Now, they'll claim not to remember even unforgettable events. They will flatly deny that they ever happened, and will never entertain the possibility that they possibly could have forgotten. This is an extremely aggressive and infuriating tactic called gaslighting, a common technique used by all kinds of abusers. Your perceptions of reality are continually undermined, so you end up feeling no sense of confidence in your own intuition, memory, or reasoning, or logic. Sick. Then there is the death by 1,000 cuts, which is number 4 on the list. This is a really fun game these creatures love to play, which involves destroying your soul, your ego, your accomplishments, and any belief system you have that does not agree with theirs. The way this game is won is for them to try to turn everything about you and everything you do into a complete failure. Extra points are given when they can take all the credit for anything good that's ever happened and put it all in their own pot. Double points are earned when they manage to put all the blame for anything bad onto the other player, which is you. Here is a very important item on this list, which really sums up the way these retarded creatures really are. And that would be number 6, the king/queen game. Ugh, I couldn't have said this one better myself. It's the most important thing to remember about this game when you're dealing with one of the creatures is that no one can know the rules except the king or queen, which would be your creature. Either the king or queen gets to make up the rules as they go along. They don't have to tell the other players the new rules, and they can change the rules whenever they want. They are the king or queen, and therefore always win the game. You can be penalized for breaking the rules, even if they choose not to tell you the rules. Sick! But yes, sounds retarded, but that is exactly the way they operate. Now, they won't say these words to you usually, like, oh no, I'm allowed to break the rules, but you're not. No, they won't say it, but you'll pick up on it, and as I said before, you have to use that knowledge and keep it to yourself. Don't share it because they'll just discredit it, even though it's perfectly sensible. And then there's number 7, cat and mouse. Cat and mouse is a kind of competitive patience solitaire game for 2 players. It is evidently named after a card game where cards are arranged from low to high with the kings being wild. Suits, to be the normal order of things and or common societal rules, are irrelevant in the game. The game ends when someone wins by playing the last card of their payoff pile. The game can also end if the players run out of cards, in which case the result is a draw. This type of game is perfect for these creatures because it's actually a form of solitaire. It requires one-upmanship and involves pulling out better cards to beat the opponent. It involves a payoff. For this creature, that usually means hurting you in some way. They keep track of real or imaginary things you do, have done, or might do. This is their best pile, and they will pull a card from it and use it against you whenever possible. The last one I'll cover from this list is kind of like a surprise ending. It's number 9. The game is called Keep Away. The author tells us that this is a game that you, yourself, must learn to play. It's important for you to recognize that this creature will never acknowledge that any games are being played. It's up to you to stop playing. Now, to do this, you must stop bringing up past events and behaviors because you will always be told that you're wrong, they're right, and that you need help. Don't try to get them to acknowledge or take responsibility for their words or actions because they will always say they didn't do it or it never happened. If you are dating such a creature, you can walk away from this toxic person. If it's your boss who's an abusive narcissist, you can find another job. You can walk away from your parents. if they, too, are abusive. If you choose to stick around, one way to stop playing their game is to not respond to their barbs, jabs, pleas, insults, put-downs, etc. It's difficult to stop, but perhaps thinking of it this way may help. If you're playing a game of catch with a baseball, the only way to stop the game is to not catch the ball when thrown, or not pick up the ball and throw it back. It's possible to stop playing games with these creatures, but just be prepared for an onslaught of negativity, histrionics, or accusations. You should learn to ignore inciting words, do not respond back to inciting words, hang up the phone with the proper notice, such as, "Oh, I've got something I gotta do, click." But don't just click, because you'll be pulled right back in. Or you can just leave the location where this creature is at. There are many ways for you to refuse to catch the ball or put the ball down and not throw it back. This is the game of keep away. You stay away, walk away, and refuse to play.
Hi, I am the narcopath.
So, let me break it down for you, in case you didn't figure it out during our relationship. The fact is, I am a whore. I have sex with anybody I can find, male, female, or she-male, and I'm going to be an escort.
You need to get over it. Just accept the fact it didn't work out. I know I told you I was traditional and Christian and believed in one person forever, but honey, that was an act. So get over it. And you have fun with that act. I know you're lying about it too. You're just as bad as I am. I know you are.
I am the narcopath.
And the way you made such a big deal about the fact that I lied to you? Are you kidding? Have you never lied before? Lying is my number one language. English is my second language. Lying gets me what I want, obviously. I knew that if you knew what I was really about, you wouldn't have given me a second thought. As far as I'm concerned, I won. I got it. I got you. For a little while. I'm working on the next one now, and this one's even worse than you, but that'll be okay. He'll find out soon enough. And don't even bother talking to him, because he already knows you're crazy. So if you try to tell him anything, if you ever find him, he knows not to believe a word you said, just like you didn't believe my other exes when I met you. You see how the cycle works? I'm very brilliant. I am the narcopath. And you ain't!